Greetings to the class of 2019. My name is Daniel Nally. I'm very honored to have been selected to speak to such a wonderful group of people on this beautiful day. It's a very big day that will be remembered by all of you for the rest of your lives. Today, you will walk away with your diplomas and you'll proudly be able to call yourselves graduates of the CIA. The CIA is, first and foremost, a place of learning. Excellence, leadership, professionalism, ethics, and respect for diversity are at the core of what the CIA aims to teach its students each and every day. Through my many interesting interactions with students and faculty, it's easy for me to say that the CIA has done a tremendous job. You're now tasked to go out into the world with your diplomas in hand and lead the industry that we all love towards a better and brighter future. I know that you are all capable of doing this. As you know, tough challenges and rewarding opportunities will present themselves to each of you. You've learned what it means to be leaders, what it means to be grounded in ethical decision making, and how to operate professionally. It is important to keep all of these lessons close at hand as you begin to shape your careers. I speak to you today as someone who's been in your shoes, or maybe, more accurately, as someone who's been in your clogs and worn your apron. I've worked hard and I'm still learning something new every day. Ours is a lifelong learning experience requiring a never-ending inquisitive nature, openness to new ideas, and the realization that in most cases, you will not be able to do it alone. You've chosen rigorous training through the form of education embraced by the CIA, an education that will set you in motion to become a dynamic leader. You will need a strong team to help you grow, to challenge you, and to inspire you. The team that surrounds you will become your second family. For some, that team may even be your only family. Preparing for this talk today, I considered some of the key influences that inform my professional life. Continuing my education, furthering my craft, and embracing the notion of lifelong learning are all key. Developing strong professional connections and meaningful relationships, not only with the people who are important in my industry, but also each and every person with whom I work, is critical. But when I focus on what really matters, my mind keeps drawing me to the importance of being an effective, inspirational, and kind leader. Leadership is not an easy thing. It's difficult to be expected to instantly have the right answer, to always be at the top of your game, and to give constructive feedback without offending people, while expecting good results. Day in and day out, interactions with the people with whom you surround yourself, including your peer, the staff whom you employ, and the guests who you serve, must be grounded in an ethical foundation. Without this commitment to leading ethically, continued success is impossible. When thinking about how I define a leader, I think it comes down to someone who's willing to challenge the status quo and take care of his or her people, whether it's easy or not. While preparing for this address, I couldn't stop thinking about a person who has had a tremendous impact on my life. My grandfather, Joseph Thomas Nally. From a working class family who lived in South Central Los Angeles, Joe had to work hard for everything, as did his immigrant parents. He came to know unrivaled success in his career. Success to him, however, was not measured by the size of his home or the value of the car that he drove. But for him, success was caring about the people around him, including his beloved wife, Teresa. He was honest and focused, but rarely without a twinkle in his eye or a joke on his tongue, and he was fiercely loyal. So a little bit more background on the man that I call Papa, even 5 years after his passing. He was a Santa Clara University, or SCU, graduate, having received a full-ride baseball scholarship. He went on to become an All-American baseball player, and was ultimately drafted by the New York Yankees. He played shortstop for a year in AAA in Twin Falls, Idaho. Unfortunately, his dream of continuing his baseball career was not realized because he was called to join the war effort in Korea. In those days, participation in ROTC was a mandatory commitment for freshmen and sophomores, and the RTC program at Santa Clara was focused on training young men to become officers in the artillery wing of the Army. Once the war effort began, Joe was drafted, sent to basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and several months later found himself in Korea. He became a 23-year-old second lieutenant leading a platoon of mostly illiterate young men from Alabama. Fortunately, a veteran who fought his way across the Pacific Theater in World War II was one of Joe's subordinates, and he became a trusted confidant and friend. Sergeant Rock, as he was affectionately nicknamed, assisted Joe as he adjusted to his new role of leading people in combat, whose very lives depended on him making the right decisions. I would like to re-emphasize that Joe, my grandpa, was 23 and in charge of the lives of over 100 men in a war-torn country halfway across the world. 23. The role of Joe's platoon was to command 5 self-propelled 105mm howitzers that were essentially open-air tanks with machine guns and a single cannon. Machine gun nests, bazookas, hand-thrown grenades, and small arms were all used to defend their overwatch positions every day. Joe was commanded on several occasions to employ his team, which also included South Korean troops, to identify, secure, and fortify strategic hills from which they could call in long-range heavy artillery fire over their heads at the advancing enemy. Given the strategic importance of these hilltop forward observation fire bases, their positions were attacked routinely. My 23-year-old grandpa, along with Sergeant Rock and his platoon of soldiers, frequently engaged in hand-to-hand combat. No more baseball. Amidst violence, filth, and death, they were a team, and he was their leader. A leader of a group of men whom he cared for as if they were his family. He led, supported, and encouraged them day and night. On one occasion, their hilltop base was under heavy attack from Chinese regulars. This is true as well for one of Joe's baseball and ROTC buddies from SCU, Second Lieutenant Tom Gearin, who was commanding an almost identical hilltop command post several miles to the north of Papa's position. While actively trying to defend his own hill, Joe began to hear radio chatter that Tom's position was so far overrun by Chinese regulars that Tom actually requested fire upon his own position from the howitzers located 10 miles to the south. The commanding colonel repeatedly refused Tom's requests because he didn't want to be responsible for the friendly fire deaths of American soldiers. After hearing several repeated cries for help, it became clear to Papa that his friend was in the process of being overrun and that the colonel was refusing his repeated requests. It quickly became apparent that the situation was so grim that if this request wasn't immediately approved, Tom's entire platoon would have been wiped out. That was unacceptable to my grandpa, as he knew that Tom was the kind of man who rarely asked for help, only doing so when he really needed it. He became so incensed that this colonel, tucked safely away behind his howitzers 10 miles to the rear of the front lines, was refusing the request of his friend. So Joe got on the radio and had a very firm conversation with the colonel, who was at least 3 grades higher in rank. Keep in mind, Joe could have been court-martialed for speaking insubordinately. After a couple of refusals from the colonel, who thought the risk to himself was too great to allow the potential for friendly fire, Joe radioed back to command and told the colonel, and I quote, "The next time I see you, I'm going to beat the bleep out of you if you don't fire those howitzers." Taking the tone of my grandfather's voice into consideration, the colonel fired artillery rounds into Lieutenant Gearin's position as requested. This action, on Papa's part, ended up causing the attacking Chinese forces to be decimated, and they had to retreat, effectively saving the lives of the whole platoon of men. Joe was a leader. As mentioned in my opening, leadership isn't an easy thing. It's difficult to always be expected to give the right answer, to always be on your game. Joe had to teach and mentor every day. He had to give the right answer. He had to be on his game or lives would have been lost. I'm sure he gave feedback, tough love sometimes, but undoubtedly he was respected and admired, and his men performed for him and for the greater good. He led with honor, offering dignity to the men who worked for him. Joe was a leader who believed in the ethical tenets of truthfulness, autonomy, respect for persons, moral obligations, and justice. He led in baseball, in the Army, in his career, as a father, and as a grandfather. He led throughout his life. With thoughts of Joe, and in defining a leader, I believe a leader is one who is willing to challenge the status quo. A leader takes care of his or her people. A leader acts with courage and determination, is honest but tough, is fair and just. I think that continuous questioning of what is right and wrong, taking risks, and always protecting your people is the best route towards being an ethical and strong leader. So I challenge you, class of 2019, go forth and be your own version of Joe. Do the right thing, sacrifice for your friends and associates, and be kind. Be kind. Thank you for your time, and congratulations to the class of 2019.